Now that we've trimmed the brisket, let's get on to the next part, which is the seasoning. There's lots of different approaches you can do. Some people do salt and pepper, some people do salt, pepper, garlic. I'm gonna do it my way, and that's with our very own BBQ Mama all-purpose rub. I first developed this rub to make my brisket start out here in the Los Angeles area. Believe it or not, specifically East Los Angeles, the barbecue games have been getting pretty competitive. Lots of good guys are putting out some good food. I wanted to go ahead and represent my roots with a little bit of a Mexican flavor, a little bit of a Tex-Mex style, and that's reflected in the BBQ Mama barbecue rub. It has a little bit of savory, a little bit of chilies in there. It's not too hot, and honestly, I use it on everything. So let's go ahead and go to what we're gonna do. So, first things first is you wanna pick a good flake salt. You can get the blue box Morton's kosher one. There's like, I think the something diamond crystal, that's another brand. I went here to my local Costco and I just got the regular kosher flake sea salt. Now, if you wanted to, you can apply a binder right now and then put the salt. Personally, I like to let the salt ions penetrate a little bit. So let's go ahead and salt up this brisket. So there's lots of different ways you can salt. Personally, what I like to do is I like to get the edges first and kind of do one of these moves, just from up there. Don't worry, it's a pretty big cut of meat that can withstand a lot of seasoning. So here we go, we salt up the edges. Then I go ahead and just kind of like salt up the top. If you want to use the salt shaker, you can. I'm using a shaker for my barbecue rub. Get that side, get it salted in. I like to press a little bit. Remember, salt's meant to enhance the flavors that you have on there. You don't want to go too heavy, but you also don't want to go too light. It's going to have a long cook. It's going to give it time to really penetrate. Let's go ahead and flip it. Do the same thing at the top. Some people don't salt or season the fat side. I do. It's always worked good for me. Now I'm going to let it hang out there, you know, a few minutes or so, not too long. You can put it back in the fridge if you want. And when you get back, I'm going to show you how we will apply the binder and then put on some seasoning. Now at this point, you can choose to apply a binder or to not apply a binder. Everyone's a little bit different. Also, another debate is, am I going to cook fat side up, fat side down? It all depends on your cooker. I'm going to be cooking in my old hickory pit in back of me. The heat rolls over the top, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook it fat side up. With that being said, I noticed, you know, when I didn't use a binder, a lot of my rub came off. This other smoker that I have here on my left side is the Stumps XL Stretch. The heat comes from the bottom, so on that one, I'm having it fat side down to go ahead and protect the meat. Like I said, this one here, it's going to be fat side up. With that being said, I need to make sure I get that binder. So what kind of binder will you use? Some people like olive oil. For me, what's worked the best has been mustard. So you're just going to get some regular old deli mustard and apply that right here. Same thing, you're just going to go ahead and spread it on. Remember, those salt ions have already penetrated, so you don't have to worry. You're not using a lot of mustard. You just want to make sure that you're able to get the rub to stick. Make sure that you get those sides. Okay, now let's get ready to season our brisket. What I'm using today is the BBQ Mama barbecue rub. Depending on when you're watching this video, it might be out. Just check the links below, but you can use any rub you want. The concepts still apply. So, if you make your own rub, like I am at the time of this video, I just have an old little bottle that I got from Smart & Final. Now, one thing that you can do to keep things clean is apply a rub condom. It's just a plastic glove. So the thing is, you're going to be touching the meat. Chances are your hands are going to get dirty. So just to keep things a little clean, just going to go ahead and use our little, having trouble getting this on. Reminds me of something else. So here we go right here, Magnum brisket. So we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of rub on the side right here. Want to make sure that you get a good amount of rub. This is a big cut of meat and it can withstand a lot of flavors. Okay, now that's done. We're going to go ahead and come from the top. Sprinkle that rub on. And even though it's called a rub, you're not going to rub it in. That's going to make it fall off. All you do is you're going to pat that meat. There we go. A little bit more if you want. Now if you want, you can let it sit here, sweat a little bit. I'll be honest with you, when I'm cooking 12, 24 briskets at a time, I don't have time to let them sweat. I apply, and by the time I get that rotation going, they're already going in the cooker. Now let's go ahead, flip it over, and do the same thing to the top. Gonna apply that mustard. Remember, the salt ions have already been penetrated, so you don't have to worry about the salt coming off. And this rub right here is going to give things a really good amount of color. I like the flavors that come through. You know, it's savory. Nothing wrong with, you know, salt and pepper. That's great, or salt, pepper, garlic. But this OG brisket rub really gives you a really unique flavor that I personally like. So now that's applied, same thing. You're going to go ahead, pat it down, and oh, I forgot to talk to you guys about temperature. So we're going to go and get it in the cooker. Today I'm going to roll at 225 degrees. Now this cooker that I have here, I already know that when I set this thing at 225, the top rack where the brisket's going to be runs a little bit hotter. So it's going to be about 250 there, and that's where we're going to put it today. So like I said, right now you can go ahead and, you know, let the brisket sit there, let the flavors penetrate. In my experience, I just like to get it on as soon as possible. When the meat's cold, you're going to have a better chance of getting that beautiful smoke ring. So let's do it. Okay, smoker's up to temperature. Like I said, we're running 225. We're going to be using some pecan and a little bit of cherry. Depending on the cooker that you have, it's going to, you know, determine the temps that you're using. I use 225 because I already know at the top racks it's at 250 degrees. We're going to put it in there for about a few hours, and then after that we'll start checking the spritz. Total cook time might be around 12 hours or so. Now let's get it in the cooker. And remember, the way that you lay is the way you're going to cook. I'm happy with the position. I already know my hotter spot on this cooker is in the back. Going to go ahead and pump it in, and we'll be checking it in just a few hours. Okay, it's been about 3.5 hours. Our brisket is starting to get really good development of bark. Right now I'm going to start giving it a spritz. The point of giving it a spritz is to prevent these edges right here from burning up to a crisp. One other thing that I also like to do in a lot of my pits is I'll put a pan of water in there. The point of that is to help make sure that there's even temperature throughout the pit. As the steam moves, it'll help the temperature be even. On this pit, typically, on my old Hickory CTO, the top of the pit's a little bit warmer than at the bottom. So kind of what I found out anecdotally is that by adding that water pan in there, I'm actually able to keep an even temperature. Also, another big question I get is what temp do I wrap? What temp am I spraying at? You want to go more so by feel. But if we were going to go ahead and take a temp, what I have right here is my instant read thermometer. Give me 1 second, guys. Oh, there we go. Sorry. We're temping like at 161. Let's go check right here. There we go. We are at 162 degrees. So earlier I didn't get a chance to really talk about why we're using the wood that we're using. So today we're running with a log of pecan, or logs of pecan, and some cherry wood. I'd say like a 90% of my barbecue, that's usually the wood that I use. I really like the pecan. It imparts a nuttiness I like using with brisket. And if you can't find pecan in your area, it's okay. You can go ahead and use hickory. Pecan is actually part of the hickory family. It doesn't matter whether you're on a Weber Smoky Mountain, a Weber grill, any kind of cooker, using both of these two woods together is going to steer you in the right direction. So let's go ahead and talk now about some tools that you're going to want to have in your tool belt for barbecue. One of the big questions I get is, what am I spraying with and what am I spraying, right? So most of the time I'll use water or a mixture of apple cider vinegar and water. Some people like to use fruit juices. The problem when you use fruit juices, you have to remember, anytime that you're adding some sugar onto the barbecue, you have a chance of that sugar burning. So you might want to use fruit juices for wood. When I'm using beef, it's almost always water or apple cider vinegar and water. And what I'm spraying with is just your basic little sprayer from Home Depot. It's nothing too fancy. These things are like 20 bucks. I've had fancier sprayers. These seem to do me really well. And especially when you're getting a big cook and you have to reach all the way back in there, spritz. You'll be able to go ahead and get that meat nice and wet. Next thing you're gonna want are some glove liners. So these glove liners that you see under here are gonna prevent you from getting burned. You can find them like at Harbor Freight. They have them at Home Depot, but Harbor Freight's a little bit cheaper. Right here, after that, you're gonna want some gloves. So these two things are gonna protect your hands. If you can't find black gloves, don't worry about it. Get whatever is available for you. And the final tool is gonna be an instant read thermometer. Now, most of the time, you know, when we're getting ready to wrap, a lot of that's going to be done by feel. Temps are a little subjective. I know some of you are going to want temps. Like, did I wrap at 165? Am I wrapping at 170, 175? It's all conditional. Remember, you're going to want to wrap when the bark is nice and set. And right now, we're using foil, so we have to make sure that bark is super set. But for argument's sake, and so you guys can learn, we're going to go ahead and use a thermometer. Another good thing about the thermometer is that you'll be able to check when the brisket's done. Is a brisket going to be done at 199? I don't know. Is it 201? Might be even 210. What you're really looking for is that probe. And this might be a little bit different, but we're looking for that whack feeling, if you know what I mean. That probe's got to go right through, and you're looking for, let's see, how can I say this? A toothpick going through peanut butter is what you want to be looking for. And you're going to be able to get this. So a lot of times we use this for temp to kind of see where you're at, but a lot of times it's just for the feel. All right, let's go see how our brisket's doing. So here's the brisket. We've been spritzing it every 30 minutes since we checked. Last time we were at about maybe the 4-hour mark or so. It's been about 7 hours total. Key things to look for is not just temperature. When I put my finger like this and the rub doesn't come off, it's ready to wrap. Also, because we're cooking with foil, we need to make sure that this rub is super set. But I know some of you out there really want to see the temperature, so let's go see where it's at. You're going to want to pick right here. That's between the flat and the point. It's about 179. Now, I know some of your keyboard cooks are going to say that it's too overdone, but like I said, we cook until feel, not just times and temps. But if we want to recap what we did, we were at 225, 250 for about the first 3.5, 4 hours. After that, we started spritzing it every 30 minutes. When the brisket was up to the feel that we're looking for, which ended up being about 180 degrees, then we're going to wrap it. If you're using butcher paper, you probably could have pulled it off a little bit sooner, but because we are using foil, the brisket can tend to steam, so we need to make sure that bark is super set or your bark's going to wash all the way off. Some people don't like to use foil. I love it. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and wrap our brisket. Now, why do we wrap? Should you wrap? Maybe yes, maybe no. It all depends on you and what you're feeling like. The wrap's going to ensure that your brisket gets nice and tender. Like I said, you can use butcher paper, you can use foil, and there's a couple of things to keep in mind, or you might not even wrap at all. Like, I'm not going to lie, there's been times where I've had everything here really low, and I've let the brisket cook all night. It's been naked, and I've actually done a little ninja trick here. I've rehydrated on the rest. Bet you didn't know about that one. So if you're skilled, or you want to try the technique, you can cook your brisket all the way, let it rest naked, and then rehydrate on the rest. But today we didn't do that. We went with my best method because I want you to have the best brisket for your backyard barbecue. And what kind of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt would I be if I wasn't being honest? So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you a technique that you probably haven't seen before. So one of the things that I've noticed is that when people do competition barbecue, a lot of times, like I said, they are meat side up and not fat side up. They have two different goals, right? The backyard cook, somewhere in between. You're going to be serving food to your friends, the family. You know, you're not really going to get the best slices there for a judge. Your judge is your family, and if they want to go ahead and finish eating your food. So with that being said, you have to have a mix of the two. What I noticed is when I started cooking, I was doing my briskets meat side up for food service, and I noticed that when I had a long rest, it was difficult for me to make sure that all the briskets were done at the same time, rested and tasty. Then I switched over to fat side up. I noticed that when I cook my briskets fat side up, they tended to do well with a longer rest. That's something we're going to get into later. I'm also going to give you some expert resting techniques that you can go ahead and use at your next backyard barbecue. But the problem is when I was doing them fat side up, I wasn't getting that same pop out of my rub, and that's how I came up with this technique right here. I decided to go ahead and treat it like ribs. So what we're going to do first is some of that Box Yo Mama barbecue rub. I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to lay down a little bit of super juice. I'll tell you what the super juice is in just a second. So look what we're going to do. Get 2 strips of foil laid out. Going to go ahead and sprinkle some rub. This is going to be your last chance to impart some flavor. I know this is not a traditional technique that people do with brisket. I mean, we got mentioned top 11 in the LA Times, and I promise you today, I was going to show you only the best techniques. Next thing is you're going to do is you're going to have some super juice. What is super juice? So super juice is a form of beef consomme. I'm a cooking nerd on top of a barbecue nerd. This is basically enhanced beef broth. I make my own, but what you can do is just get a can of Campbell's soup, Campbell's beef consomme, and it tastes like 99% like super juice. So we're going to go and open this up. And we're going to put a little bit of super juice here. Maybe like 1/4 cup or so. 1/4 to 1/2 cup. Just like you would with ribs. This is going to help things get tender, and that super juice enhances the flavor. Then we're going to get our brisket. Lay it down right here. A little bit of super juice here on the sides where the meat was exposed, but I'm not going to put it on the fat. I came up with this technique because I noticed when I was trying to put super juice all over the top, I would lose my bark. So maybe about another 1/4 to 1/2 cup right here for maybe about a total of 3/4 cup of super juice. Then we're going to go ahead and give it a wrap just like you would some ribs. So there's lots of wrapping techniques. I'm just going to show you what works for me. This is also why it's important to give a good trim. It's going to make it easier for me to wrap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a fold here. Okay. I'm going to give this one a fold right here. Make sure that that juice doesn't come out. Oh, and that juice came out. It's okay because we're being realistic like we would in our backyard. I was trying to be cool for the camera and it slipped out. That's not a problem. We're here unadulterated. It's a little bit more super juice right here. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and give this a wrap. So you're going to wrap it real tight because just like with ribs, you don't want it to steam. It's going to help you protect your bark. Press out that air, and then you're going to go ahead and wrap it with that second piece of foil right there. Make sure it's nice and tight. And now you guys know how to recover from a mistake. Because, I mean, it's easy for anybody to cook the perfect brisket one time. What's going to happen, you're going to watch this video, you're going to do 1 brisket, then 2 briskets, then you're going to start cooking for your whole neighborhood, and maybe you might have a barbecue pop-up like me. So now at this point, we're going to get the brisket and put it back in the cooker. If you wanted to save some money on gas, I'm sorry, on fuel, you can go ahead and put that in the oven. You can set your oven to about like 250. Personally, I like to keep the temperature the entire way through. In my experience, that's allowed for a better brisket. But if you're behind, you can crank it up to 250, 275. The choice is yours. At this point, it's going to take about maybe a couple hours to finish. We're going to be checking with our thermometer, but not checking just for temp. We're checking for the perfect tenderness. That whap or that toothpick through peanut butter tenderness is what we are looking for. The temperature is just going to let us know when to check. So we're going to go ahead and toss it back, And then next time I see you, we'll be checking the tenderness of the brisket.